My 25-year-old sister Sarah and my entire family spent 3 days in a group chat planning how to uninvite me from her wedding, while I was still wiring money like their unpaid intern. The notification hit during my lunch break, wedding planning final guest list. I opened it thinking they wanted my input on seating. Instead, I scrolled through 47 messages about how much drama I'd cause, how I always make everything about myself, and how relieved they were that we all agreed Kyle shouldn't come. My mom typed, "Kyle will ruin the vibe. Sarah's day should be perfect without his negativity." Sarah added, "Honestly, I'm happier knowing he won't be there to judge everything." They were celebrating my exclusion like it was a win, while I was quietly funding their perfect day. I'm 28, a software engineer, and for 6 months I'd been sending payments whenever mom called with another emergency. Venue deposits, catering, flowers, $16,500. Money they were happy to take, even if they didn't want my face in the photos. And sitting in my email was the other receipt. $3,800 for business class flights to Hawaii, their surprise honeymoon. Here's the part they forgot when they decided the family ATM didn't deserve an invitation. Every vendor contract was in my name. Every authorization. Every deposit. They wanted my money, just not my presence. And the moment I realized that, I started quietly dismantling the wedding I wasn't invited to attend. Let me explain how I became the family ATM, how Sarah and my parents got comfortable treating my bank account like a shared resource. I'm 28, a software engineer, making $95,000 a year. Not rich, just stable enough to have savings. Sarah is 25, works part-time retail, and still lives in my parents' basement. Not because she has to, because it's easier when everyone protects her from consequences. The gap isn't only money, it's the way my family labels money. When I got promoted last year and my salary jumped from $80K to $95K, my dad didn't say congratulations, he said, "Good. Now you can help more with family expenses." When Sarah picked up one extra shift and made $40, mom posted on Facebook about her hardworking daughter with heart eye emojis. My success was measured by how useful it was to everyone else. Sarah's effort was celebrated just for showing up. That pattern started in college. I worked nights at a restaurant and took freelance coding gigs on weekends to cover tuition. My parents contributed $0 and framed it as building character through self-reliance. Meanwhile, they paid $45,000 for Sarah's marketing degree, then called it investing in her future. When I graduated debt-free, I got a handshake. When Sarah graduated, she got a party, a car, and 6 months of transition time to find her passion. I was the family ATM, not a family member. And like any good ATM, I was expected to stay quiet. Mom's car repair? I'd get the call. Dad's medical copay? You have savings? Sarah's credit card debt after a shopping spree? Family helps family. Except, family helps family was a one-way street that always ended at my login screen. Sarah didn't make enough to contribute, but she somehow made enough for weekend trips, designer clothes, and a lifestyle that looked suspiciously stress-free. My parents never pushed her because they didn't want to stress her out with adult responsibilities. I was the unpaid intern who handled the hard parts so the golden child could keep smiling. So when the wedding came around, it was just the same pattern, scaled up. Sarah wanted a dream wedding she couldn't afford. My parents wanted to give it to her without touching their retirement, and they already had a solution: my account and my sense of obligation. Sarah got the princess treatment while I got the bills. But realizing I'd become their personal bank account was only the beginning. The real gut punch was learning how deliberately they'd planned to exclude me from the celebration I was funding. It happened 3 weeks before the wedding, during my lunch break. My phone buzzed on my desk while I was finishing up code, and the group chat name flashed across my screen. Wedding planning final guest list. I assumed they needed my input. Seating, +1s, last-minute confirmations. Sarah had been asking for logistics. And in my family, logistics usually meant something I was expected to handle. I tapped the thread, and there they were, 47 messages from the past 3 days. My parents, Sarah, aunts, cousins I barely spoke to. Everyone discussing table assignments, dietary restrictions, who should sit near who, and my name wasn't anywhere. Not as a problem to solve, not as a person to accommodate, not even as an afterthought. I scrolled again, slower this time, because my brain kept trying to rewrite it into an innocent mistake, but the tone wasn't, "Oops, we forgot Kyle." It was settled, casual. Like my absence was just another box they'd already checked. Then I hit the part that made my stomach drop. My mom wrote, "Kyle will ruin the vibe. Sarah's day should be perfect without his negativity." Sarah replied, "Honestly, I'm happier knowing he won't be there to judge everything and make it about himself." And buried in the replies was the line that explained everything. We all agreed Kyle shouldn't come. They weren't excluding me by accident, they weren't debating it, they'd already voted, quietly, confidently, like it was obvious the person paying for the wedding didn't deserve to be in the room. That's what hurt them most, how normal it felt to them, like I was a problem they'd solved, while my money stayed useful. I stared at those messages for a long time, and a single thought settled in with uncomfortable clarity. They didn't want me as family, they wanted me as the family ATM. That night, after staring at those group chat messages until my eyes burned, I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I ran the numbers. I opened my banking app and pulled up every transfer I'd sent to my mother over the past 6 months. Every emergency, every unexpected expense, every promise that it was temporary until things settled down. The list read like a wedding budget I'd never agreed to fund. January, venue deposit, $8,000. Kyle, we found the perfect place, but they need the deposit by tomorrow or someone else will take it. February, catering, $4,500. The caterer is threatening to cancel if we don't pay the balance. Sarah will be devastated. March, flowers, $2,000. The florist needs payment upfront to fix a mistake. April, photography, $2,000. This photographer is exactly what Sarah dreamed of, but they need money now to hold the date. Every message had the same shape, urgency, emotion, and just enough guilt to make no feel cruel. Each payment was framed as me saving Sarah's wedding, being the reliable son who stepped in when everyone else couldn't. $16,500 for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. Then I opened my email and felt a different kind of sick. 2 business class tickets to Hawaii, purchased with my credit card, $3,800. A surprise honeymoon gift I'd planned quietly because I thought it would be the one part of this whole mess that was purely joyful. Premium seats, a real break. Something Sarah always talked about but never believed she'd get. I'd pictured handing over the confirmation at the reception. I'd pictured my parents smiling like I'd finally proven I was a good brother. Instead, I was staring at a honeymoon meant for people who had just agreed I shouldn't even be in the room. I went back to the transfers and the pattern finally stopped feeling random. Everything was designed to bypass logic. The requests were always right now, always framed as for Sarah, always delivered with the same unspoken rule: if I hesitated, I was the problem; if I questioned it, I was focused on money; if I said no, I was not supporting family. They didn't need me at the wedding. They needed me on autopay. And once that clicked, the anger didn't come out as shouting, it came out as clarity. I stopped reacting to their emergencies. I started documenting them. Documentation turned into investigation, and the investigation made the wedding exclusion look almost simple. I started by organizing my bank statements, building a timeline of every request and every transfer. But when I began cross-referencing dates, I noticed something on my credit card statement that didn't fit my spending patterns. Small charges at first, a craft store purchase in February, a dress shop charge in March, a checkout for wedding favors from a site I'd never visited, small enough to slip past a casual review, specific enough to make my stomach tighten. Then I found the bigger ones. $2,300 at a bridal boutique, processed the same day my mother had called about the flower emergency. $1,500 paid to a wedding planner I'd never heard of, dated exactly 1 week after I'd sent money for catering. I stared at those lines until my brain stopped trying to explain them away. Someone had been using my credit card for wedding purchases while asking me for cash to cover wedding expenses. I pulled my statements again and looked at the rhythm. Urgent phone call, emotional story, transfer sent, then unauthorized charges appearing within days, like my help was being treated as permission to take more. That's when the word I'd avoided all night finally landed. Financial fraud. I checked my account details. I checked the merchant receipts. I checked the information tied to the charges. Everything pointed back to the same reality. Purchases were being made in my name for a wedding I wasn't even invited to attend. Family or not, that wasn't drama. That was identity theft. I didn't call my mother. I didn't confront anyone in the chat. I did what I'd learned to do as the family's unpaid intern. I handled the problem, quietly, correctly, and with a paper trail. I called the fraud hotline on the back of my card. The representative's voice was calm and clinical as she walked me through the steps: dispute unauthorized charges, lock the account, document everything, file a report, and, if I wanted a full investigation, get a police report on record. Hearing it laid out like that was terrifying and clarifying. This wasn't about hurt feelings or guest lists anymore. This was someone stealing my identity to fund a wedding, and then telling everyone I was too negative to attend it. So I built a new folder next to my wedding receipts, screenshots of every unauthorized charge, email confirmations for purchases I didn't make, dates, amounts, vendors, organized like a case file. Then I opened the list of wedding vendors whose contracts were in my name and added their contact information and cancellation policies right underneath. They'd already made their choice when they decided my money was useful, but my presence was toxic. Now I was making mine. The family ATM wasn't just shutting down. It was moving this out of the family chat and into the real world. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that only comes when you finally understand exactly what you're dealing with. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started making calls. First was the venue. The contract was in my name. My card was the one on file for the $8,000 deposit. "Hi, this is Kyle. I need to cancel the event scheduled for March 15th. The coordinator hesitated. "That's in 3 weeks. Are you sure? The cancellation fee will be significant." "So, I understand. Please proceed and email me written confirmation." They tried the usual: reschedule, salvage, work with the family. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I repeated the same sentence until it became policy. "The event is canceled. Please send confirmation in writing." Second call, the caterer. Same name on the contract, same authority. The $4,500 order for 120 guests was canceled before mid-morning. Third, the photographer. The $2,000 package ended with a polite email and a clear refund timeline. One by one, their dream wedding disappeared, not with a fight, not with a screaming match, but with paperwork. Every vendor sounded slightly bewildered. They kept asking if there was an emergency, if we could postpone instead of cancel, but none of them questioned my right to do it. Because legally, I was the client. My name, my card, my decision. By late morning, I'd quietly dismantled 6 months of wedding planning with a handful of calls and a few emails. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt accurate. Then I opened the email that used to make me smile. The business class tickets to Hawaii, $3,800 I'd bought as a surprise honeymoon gift. I didn't try to transfer them into my name. I did the clean version. I canceled what I could, took the credit where that was the option, and rebooked the trip for me. Same destination, same dates, same level of comfort. Then I upgraded the hotel using points, added spa packages, and booked the exact activities Sarah had talked about for months. Their honeymoon became my vacation from their toxicity. Because here's what my family never understood. When you treat someone like an unpaid intern for years, you teach them to be excellent at logistics. And when you commit financial fraud against someone who documents everything for a living, you're betting they'll stay emotional instead of organized. Bad bet. That afternoon, I walked into the police station with a folder. Screenshots of every unauthorized charge, email confirmations for purchases I didn't make, dates and vendors lined up like a timeline. The officer on duty flipped through it slowly, then looked up. "This is thorough. I want it on record," I said, "and I want a formal report filed." I didn't give a speech. I didn't demand revenge. I gave facts. Unauthorized charges tied to wedding purchases, evidence saved, a fraud report started with my card issuer, and a request for an investigation. They handed me a case number. When I walked back out to my car, I didn't feel dramatic. I felt steady. Somewhere across town, my family was probably starting to get calls from confused vendors, asking why contracts were being canceled 3 weeks before the ceremony. They'd wanted my money, just not my presence. Now they were going to learn what my presence had actually been this whole time. The signature that made their dream possible, and the signature that could end it. For the next 72 hours, I did something that would have felt impossible a week earlier. Absolutely nothing. I didn't call to explain. I didn't send a dramatic text. I didn't respond to the little messages still trickling in about wedding details like nothing had changed. Timing questions, +1s, what to wear. I just watched my phone and waited for reality to catch up. Because canceling a wedding 3 weeks out doesn't stay private. Vendors don't quietly delete a booking and move on. They confirm, they follow up, they send written notices. And when the person who signed every contract isn't the person doing the day-to-day planning, those confirmations land like a grenade in the middle of a family group chat. I gave them 3 days to enjoy their delusion. During those 3 days, I did what I'd trained myself to do as the family's unpaid intern. I prepared. I created a folder on my desktop and built a case file designed to survive denial, gaslighting, and selective memory. Screenshots from the group chat. Especially the line that mattered. We all agreed Kyle shouldn't come. Bank statements showing every transfer dated and labeled. Vendor confirmations proving the contracts were mine to cancel. Credit card statements showing the unauthorized charges aligned with the same emergency calls that triggered transfers. Then I went one layer deeper. I saved every money text, every "you're all we have right now," every voicemail that tried to turn my boundaries into a character flaw. I organized it by date and pattern because patterns are harder to argue with than feelings. Every lie they'd tell would have a receipt to contradict it. And quietly, without announcing it to anyone, I tightened the risks. Card locked, disputes filed, fraud report in motion, police report on record with a case number, nothing emotional, nothing impulsive, just clean, legal steps that could be repeated in one sentence if I ever needed to say it out loud. The last thing I did was open my travel confirmation and make sure it was real. Same dates as the honeymoon I'd originally booked. Business class confirmed, resort upgraded, spa packages and activities already scheduled, the trip I'd planned as generosity, now repurposed as escape. While my family scrambled to explain vendor emails and unanswered questions, I'd be stepping onto a plane with a boarding pass that had my name on it. Finally spending my money on someone who actually valued my presence. While they panicked about the wedding, I'd be in paradise. And the cleanest part was this. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't broken any rules. I canceled contracts in my name, protected my identity from financial fraud, and stopped letting other people write my ending. I wasn't the villain. I was just the family ATM who finally closed the account, quietly, permanently, and with receipts. Day 3 ended the silence. At 8:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to 3 straight minutes of confusion and panic about vendors calling to confirm cancellations that nobody understood. 20 minutes later, my mother called, then my father, then Sarah again, this time crying. By 10 a.m., my phone wasn't just ringing, it was lighting up with notifications from the family group chat, the one that had suddenly remembered I existed. The wedding was unraveling exactly the way reality always does when paperwork meets denial. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling in my mug, and watched the messages stack up. The venue says our event is canceled. The caterer says the contract is terminated. The photographer emailed a cancellation notice. They said Kyle called personally. How is that possible? My mother went straight to the only story she ever liked. Someone hacked something. I'm calling Kyle right now. My father tried to sound reasonable. Maybe it's a payment issue. Kyle's probably just trying to help. But the confirmations kept coming. One vendor after another, all saying the same thing in different words. Canceled, in writing, authorized by the person whose name was on the contracts. That's when I opened my laptop. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself with feelings. I posted facts, one receipt at a time, into the chat where 23 relatives could see it all at once. First, a screenshot from the earlier thread. The line highlighted like a verdict. We all agreed Kyle shouldn't come. Second, bank statements showing $16,500 in transfers over 6 months, each one tied to a wedding emergency. Third, screenshots of unauthorized credit card charges aligned with the same timeline, proof that the emergencies didn't stop at begging. They escalated into financial fraud. Fourth, vendor confirmations, contracts canceled, refunds, timelines documented because the contracts were in my name. For exactly 4 minutes, the chat went silent. Then it detonated. Not because anyone suddenly felt guilty. Because the story my family had been telling themselves, that I was dramatic and negative, couldn't survive a clean timeline and a stack of receipts. And then a new message appeared from someone who wasn't part of their echo chamber. Linda, the groom's mother. Her text was short, controlled, adult in a room full of panic. Sarah, call me, now. I didn't wait for my mother to spin it. I called Linda first. Hi, Linda, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is Kyle, Sarah's brother. I'm calling because you're about to hear a version of this that leaves out the only parts that matter. I walked her through it slowly and cleanly. The group chat decision to exclude me, the money, $16,500 over 6 months, sent while they treated me like the family ATM. The contracts being in my name, which is why I had the legal authority to cancel. The unauthorized charges and why this crossed into identity theft. The steps I'd already taken, card locked, disputes filed, fraud report started, and a police report on record with a case number. I didn't insult my family. I didn't ask Linda to take my side. I just gave her the truth in a format she could verify. Linda was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you for telling me directly." Another pause. Then, "I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm going to be very clear. There will not be a wedding if this is the situation we're marrying into. My son deserves honesty, and right now this is a mess built on lies." When I hung up, my phone exploded again. My mother swung between rage and pleading. Sarah begged me to fix it, like I'd been fixing everything for years. My father sent a separate message that was quieter than the rest. "Son, I'm not saying you're wrong, but did you have to burn it all down?" I stared at that text, then looked back at the receipts folder on my laptop. Being reasonable had gotten me more bills and less respect. Being generous had gotten me used. Being quiet had gotten me excluded. So yes, I went back to the group chat and sent one final message, short enough that nobody could pretend that they didn't see it. "The family ATM is permanently closed. We all agreed I shouldn't come, so I removed my name, my money, and my signature from the wedding. A police report is on record. A fraud report is in motion. I'll be in Hawaii next week, business class, using the trip I originally booked for people who decided I wasn't worth inviting. Do not contact me again." Then I left the chat. Then I blocked every number that had ever treated family like a password to my bank account. The family ATM was permanently closed. 2 weeks later, I was sipping a Mai Tai at a beachfront resort in Maui, watching a sunset I'd originally planned to gift to people who decided I wasn't worth including in their happiness. The business class flight was everything I remembered paying for. Lie flat seats, quiet cabin, the kind of comfort that makes the price feel real. The difference was simple. This time, the person using it actually valued the person who paid for it. Maui did something my family never could. It stayed quiet. No phone buzzing with emergencies, no guilt dressed up as family loyalty, no last-minute deadlines designed to make me panic and comply. I'd changed my number before the trip, and the only people who had it were the ones who didn't treat me like an unpaid intern with a bank account. I spent my mornings in the water. My afternoons at the spa I'd added with points. My evenings eating dinner slowly without waiting for a call that would ruin it. Paradise felt different when it was earned, not extracted. Back home, the fallout kept moving without me. The wedding never came back. The vendor confirmations stayed in my folder. The screenshots stayed exactly where I dropped them. 23 relatives and one outside witness seeing the same truth at the same time. And the legal side stayed where it belonged too. On record, case number, reports filed. My job wasn't to punish anyone. My job was to stop being used and to protect my identity from financial fraud. 6 months later, the quiet was still there. Not because my family suddenly understood, because I stopped letting them negotiate my boundaries. I wasn't the family ATM anymore. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the unpaid intern. I was just Kyle, someone who finally learned the cleanest equation in the world. If you don't want my presence, you don't get my money.